Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sneha and today I'm going to review the Charlotte Tilbury Bar of Gold palette. So if you'd like to see swatches, review and how these apply on my skin tone, please continue watching. So this is the packaging the palette came in. Absolutely beautiful, and on the back it says brush on top of cheekbones, temples, cupid's bow and décolletage for award-winning skin. It does have 2.5 grams in each of the gold bars, if that makes sense. So a total of 7.5 grams in this palette. The palette retails for £49 in the UK or $58 in the US. So that brings the price per gram quite high actually. I'm going to list it right here. Also list some popular highlighter comparisons with it. It's definitely on the pricier side. But this is what the palette looks like. Stunning packaging as usual with Charlotte Tilbury products. And then inside you get a decent sized mirror, but these are the three shades. Against my skin tone, these are what the bars of gold look like. The first one here is the original bar of gold. The second one is called rose gold, the one in the middle. And the third one is called gold bullion. I'm just going to call it gold in the rest of the video. She recommends using this along with her airbrush flawless filter powder, which is this for increasing the longevity of the highlighter. And also with her, I believe it's called the cheek brush, which looks very similar to the Wayne Goss brush number 2. So that's the brush I'm going to use for application. So I had gone for the Charlotte Tilbury launch party where a lot of products were launched, not just for right now, but also going into their winter collection. And this was also one of the products that was being demonstrated on how it was being applied to the skin. So I did notice that this product can be applied both dry and wet if you want a very blinding highlight, or if you want more intensity on your eyes. So I'm going to swatch these shades on my hand right now. So these are the shades individually swatched, and this is when I've mixed all three of them. As you can see, when you mix all three, it turns into a really nice champagne gold, which I can definitely get use out of instead of using them individually. Individually, I would rather use them as an eyeshadow or an inner corner highlight because especially the first two shades look really light for my skin tone. I'm not particularly fond of really light or icy highlighters, but those would look really nice, I can see, on like light medium skin tones, whereas the darker bronzy gold shade would look really stunning on its own on deeper skin tones. So I think the palette on its own is very versatile and it would suit a large range of skin tones. The product is pretty creamy and has quite intense shine to it, but there is quite a bit of kick up in the palette. I don't know if you can see that dusty particles, and I haven't used this palette much. So this palette will be a little messy as you get more use out of it. So first I want to use this palette on my eyes, and let me get some water as well. I'm going to probably use the gold shade on my lid. So I'm going to first show you how it looks dry. So I'm just going to use my finger to pat it on since I already have my eye makeup on. So I'm just going to pat it right there, right on top of the eyeshadow that I have going on. And that was just one swipe. You can see how shimmery that is. For the other eye, I'm going to use the same shade, the gold one that I've used here, but with a damp brush. So I'm just going to use some water to spray the brush with. You can see it looks like molten gold on the brush. That is the payoff you get. So definitely on the eyes, I do prefer it light wet. Just going to match it so it doesn't look so obvious. So this is what the eyes look like. On the inner corner, I think I'm going to use the lightest shade. I'm going to use this pencil brush. So first applying it dry in this inner corner. It looks quite subtle. But I like that the product is versatile. You can maybe use it dry during the daytime and then maybe apply the product wet if you're going out in the evening. So see how much product is on the brush. It turns almost like a foiled metallic finish. A lot more compared to the other one. So that's the difference. Dry versus wet. It's going to intensify the other eye as well. Okay, let's apply the highlighters to the cheeks. And I'm afraid to use the lighter shade just because it looks so light on my skin tone. Maybe I'll start with that. If it looks too light, I'm going to add some of the other gold mixed into it, if that makes sense. So, just running my brush once through the highlighter. This is how much product was picked up into my cheeks. It's a very beautiful light highlight, if you can see that. I'm going to build it up, and I'm surprised that despite it being a light shade, it doesn't look too stark against my skin tone. So I'm loving that. The fact that I can get some use from the lighter shade in the palette as well. It looks beautiful. It looks very smooth and almost like a paste or wet consistency, and this is just applying air dry. So can you imagine how intense this would be if I went in with this kind of a wet paste instead of the dry? For the cheeks, definitely I'm not going to apply it wet because it would be ridiculous, especially because I have oily skin. But I do like this level of highlight for an everyday basis. That's the lighter shade. I'm going to apply the pink shade, the in-between rose gold shade, right on top of this. Okay, again picking up a decent amount of product, just layering it on top, just amping it up. Looks more silver white right now, you can see that. And then finally I think I'm going to layer the gold right on top so you can see what the 3 shades layered on top look like. So I'm just taking one swipe of the gold as well. Hopefully it doesn't go too dark. It's like beaming. Hopefully it's catching the light as I'm moving my face. It's beautiful. I think I like it, all of them mixed in together. I'm curious to see how the darker shade shows up on my skin tone, so I think I'm going to wear that alone. So going in just with the gold on this side. Wow, it's not as dark as I thought it would be. I think my skin tone can carry off the gold. Definitely one layer of it anyway. Looks very subtle, so I'm just going to build up on the gold shade. That's pretty impressive that I can actually get use from all 3 shades. I'm going to apply some to my Cupid's bow with a smaller brush, maybe on the bridge of my nose, which I usually never do. So I think I'm going to use the gold shade. So that's just applying it dry. It really catches the light and highlights the Cupid's bow. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to add more product. I'm just blending out the edges. That looks cute on the bridge of my nose. And this is again using the darker shade. So maybe if I use the lighter shade, it's going to show up more. Let me try some of the lightest one. I mean, there is when I look down, but because I have a ridge there, it doesn't show up when I'm looking straight ahead. That makes sense, but there you can see the highlight. Also going to apply a little bit of all 3 shades right on the temple. So this is what the Charlotte Tilbury Bar of Gold palette looks like on someone with an NC40, NC42 skin tone and MAC foundation. In Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Foundation, I'm in the shade 8, just as a reference. And this is the highlighter with all 3 shades mixed in. On my eyes, I have the highlight is the lightest and the darkest shade applied damp. And then on this side, I have the darkest shade of the highlighter, which still looks flattering on my skin tone. Doesn't look too dark. So from a distance, So overall, I'm very impressed with this palette because for a change, I can actually get use from the lightest and the darkest shade in the whole palette. Generally, when you get a highlighter palette, you'll have probably 1 or 2 shades that don't work for your skin tone. But I'm surprised that all 3 work on my medium tan skin tone. I've also seen a few reviews from people with a lighter skin tone, and they can actually use all 3 shades as well. So I think this palette works for multiple skin tones just because they all have an underlying shade of gold running through them, if that makes sense. So that kind of makes it work instead of having a white base or a too pink of a base. So what I'm going to do is swatch this against some of the other popular highlighters that I have in my collection. And if I find any dupes, I'm going to add them to this video. So first I'm going to swatch the Bar of Gold palette dry. Next I'm going to swatch the same shades but applied damp. And for my swatches, I'm going to use the Delium Tools Golden Triangle 772 small shader brush. So I don't know if you can hopefully see the difference between the wet and the dry swatch. The highlighters are definitely more amplified when they are applied wet. Now next to these individual shades, I'm going to swatch products that I think are similar in color. For the first shade, I really didn't find any exact dupes. The only one that came close to it is the Marc Jacobs Dewdrops. So I'm just going to swatch that, and it's a liquid highlighter. So when I blend it out, it does look a little similar, but slightly more golden in tone than the Charlotte Tilbury one. For the second shade, I did find 2 products that are similar. The first one is this MAC Mineralize Skinfinish highlighter in the shade Soft and Gentle. You can see that it's similar to the dry swatch of the Charlotte Tilbury one, but slightly muted version. It doesn't have the same amount of shine or gold that this one has running through it. The second one that's similar is the Becca Highlighter in the shade Opal. A slightly lighter version of the Charlotte Tilbury one, and definitely doesn't have as much shine or gold running through it. And then for this third shade, I really didn't find any dupes in my highlighter collection, but I did find dupes for the combination of these 3 gold bars, so I'm going to show you those. So when I combine them, this is what the swatch looks like. It's like a nice champagne gold, and I found 3 products that are similar to the shade. The first one is this Laura Geller highlighter in the shade Gilded Honey. The Gilded Honey is definitely more deeper gold than the combined Charlotte Tilbury Bar of Gold. Next is this Makeup Forever Pro Fusion highlighter in the shade 02. It's again a deeper gold, similar to the Gilded Honey and more peachy in tone. And then lastly, we have the Maybelline Master Chrome in the shade Molten Gold. And this shade is definitely the more gold option compared to these 3. So those were the shades that I found similar. Now in case you're curious to see how the Bar of Gold highlighters compared to the Charlotte Tilbury Bronze and Glow highlighters, I'm going to swatch those 2 highlighters somewhere here. So first swatching the lighter palette. They're definitely more subtle than the Bar of Gold. And the second one is the highlighter from the medium dark palette. So if this review was helpful to you guys, please don't forget to hit that like button and also consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me.